What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka Unique Mazique, the hardest working man in sports and gaming. And I'm also a fight guy, and I am here with my fellow fight guy, Peter Kahn, and we're here to talk the fight business overall and pretty, I would say, in totality today. How you doing today, Peter?
Brian, I'm doing great. Another beautiful day in quarantine, and looking forward to talking about some boxing and anything else that comes our way.
Absolutely. So as many of you already know, I am a Forbes contributor, also write for heavy.com. Peter also writes for Forbes as well, and he's also a boxing manager, a lifelong, almost feels like a lifelong person in the fight business, also a candidate and a nominee for Manager of the Year, Boxing Manager of the Year for 2019. Now, we are powered by Fight TV and presented by Bet Online. If you are watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the like button. If you're not watching us on YouTube and you're watching us on some other social media platform or some other source period, go ahead and go to our YouTube channel. All you got to do is go into the search bar on YouTube and search The Fight Guys. We will come up. Make sure you hit that subscribe and that notifications button so that you'll know when we put up new videos. It's not just these episodes. We have interviews with fighters. We have coverage directly from venues during fight week. We try to bring you everything that we can from the combat sports fight world. So let's jump into round one. Let's talk about Manny Pacquiao's career. Now, obviously, it's been a legendary run, but right now there is some questions about how this entire pandemic, the shutdown, the quarantine, what impact is that going to have on Manny's career? Manny's 41 years old. He'll be 42 in December. At this point, he's coming up on being inactive for a year. I gotta ask you, Peter, I want to know how you think this is going to affect Manny's career moving forward.
I mean, look, pandemic, no pandemic, Manny's been fighting once a year anyway recently.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he fought Broner. We'll start with the Broner fight, January of 2019. He did follow that up with Thurman in July of 2020, right?
Yes.
And so it's very conceivable that we're looking at under the best of circumstances. I think Manny would have been fighting maybe October, November at this point. But I mean, look, Manny's on borrowed time. Manny, he's had such an unbelievable career. I mean, the only fighter in the history of boxing to have world titles in 8 different weight classes. That'll never be replicated. No one's ever going to do that again. He's a special fighter. Obviously now as he's toward the twilight of his career, I think that for him, he doesn't mind the inactivity as much as he would have, in previous years. Partly because obviously the earning potential, but also because fighters just need to stay active. I think at his age, it's a benefit for him to maybe not put that that work on his body. He's very methodical when he goes into camp. I mean, he's been doing this for so many years, so many fights at the world championship level. And look, he's still beating top guys. Having beaten, if we really want to go back, starting with after he lost to Floyd, how he beat, name's escaping me.
Lucas Matisse.
No, before that.
Tim Bradley.
After Bradley.
Jesse Vargas.
Right. Okay. So we'll go to Vargas. Right. He beats Vargas. He loses a highly controversial fight to Jeff Horn.
Right.
He then goes and beats Lucas Matisse. Beats Adrian Broner. Beats Keith Thurman. I mean, Manny's been on a win streak since 2016. If you take away the Horn fight, I know you got to count the Horn fight. But what I'm saying. Okay, so 2018. So what I'm saying, I know you have to count the Horn fight, but it was a very close fight, right?
Yeah.
I was there. It was very difficult to judge because it was a sloppy fight. The point I'm making is that even at his age, Manny's still performing at the top level. So I'm not sure that this added time off is going to play that much of a difference in his preparation. If anything, he's going to be well rested. He knows what he's doing when he goes into camp. And the one thing that you just can't make up for is experience. The other thing is, who's Manny going to fight? You know, that question still remains to be answered. So I can tell you, you know, I had heard by good authority that it wasn't going to be Mikey Garcia, even though a lot of people still think that was something that was on the table. And it just begs the question, you know, who is there for Manny to fight? And at what point does Manny start to say, okay, this is going to be my last fight? Is it going to be when he loses, or is it going to be where he's going to say, okay, this is my last fight, win, lose, or draw? But to answer your question, I don't think it's going to affect him at all, actually. I think that he's still doing his duties as a senator in the Philippines. And I still think that just Manny, by his nature, is staying in shape. I mean, in General Santos City, he has a basketball court, you know, in his house. So he loves playing basketball. It's in his nature just to stay fit. So I think that, you know, from what I've seen historically, he takes like a 6 to 7 week training camp at most. Right. And so when everything gets back to normal, he'll get back to work. And I think that it's just not going to have any effect on him. I think if there's one person it's just not going to affect right now, it's going to be Manny.
Yeah, you know, I can understand why you would say that, but I feel almost like it's almost impossible for something like this not to have an impact. And I think right now what we're talking about more or less is a physical impact, but I'm almost thinking more of a mental or an emotional impact. And I'm saying he's somewhere destitute, and obviously, like you said, he's still carrying out his duties and his responsibilities as a politician. So he's not sitting home as idle as maybe someone else is. I mean, we talked to Javante, and he was absolutely in chill mode when we talked to him a few weeks ago. So I know I know that's not Manny, but I am looking at the fact that he hasn't fought since July of 2019. At the absolute earliest I could see Manny fighting, it would have to be something like August of September and to me, that's at the absolute earliest, based off of where we are. And who knows, maybe he fights in another country where the social distancing situation isn't as stringent as it is in the United States right now. Who knows? I don't know how that works. But for me, I'm looking at his age, and I'm looking at how he'll have to get up emotionally and get up from a mental standpoint. And it's a lot of transition, a lot of jumping back and forth from what he's doing right now in terms of just being a politician and getting back into fight mode. So I wonder how that will work. Now, on the flip side of that, I do see how this could actually, on another hand, could potentially extend him out a little bit more. Right. Manny had gotten into a point where he was fighting top-notch competition back to back to back. We just talked about all of the fighters that he'd faced since he lost to Mayweather, almost really not missing a beat, fighting guys who everybody, for the most part, recognizes by name. Because of this shutdown, because nobody has had boxing, nobody has had combat sports for the most part. I mean, obviously, we know, we'll talk about this maybe a little bit later on in the show, that UFC is soldiering on through this, you know, through whether you feel good about it or bad about it, they're soldiering on. But because everybody's so starving for boxing, I don't think that there is the requirement necessarily for Manny to fight another top name at this point. I think a Manny fight against just about anybody that PBC can line up would be well received whenever boxing gets back, just because it's boxing and just because it's Manny. And because of that, now Manny gets a pay-per-view size payday. And that's significant, I think. And I think that's in a way how this whole situation can ultimately benefit Manny and stretch him out. You give him this fight, a fight that he's more than likely going to handle as long as there's not any significant drop off of who he is. He gets to make a good piece of change for a relatively low risk and doesn't have to worry about any of the backlash for fighting his equivalent to Rocky Fielding. So I think that in that way, you might be looking at a way where it helps to extend him.
I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think that's in Manny's plans. The one thing I can tell you is that this sort of levels the playing field. What I mean by that, you have a lot of guys that are in quarantine right now. A lot of guys that are usually in the gym, staying in shape, even if they're not preparing for a particular fighter in camp, they're still going through the motions. They're still doing their road work. They're still doing things in the gym the way that they normally do them. They're right now inside, right? So they're the ones who are used to having, more activity. There could be more of a ring rust for a Pacquiao potential opponent, right? At a high level opponent, that this could actually benefit Manny, because Manny's used to this inactivity. And I made a mistake earlier in our show. I said that he fought Thurman in July, or it was July 20, but it was July 20, 2019. Look, I think that if anything, it's going to potentially be an advantage for Manny when he does come back. And I think that the time off for him, it's really nothing crazy. So, and I don't think they're going to give him a soft touch, as we like to say. I think that because of how often he's fighting, because of the potential opponents that are out there, because they have a need to do a pay-per-view around Manny, I think that that's something that would play into the fact that look, the clock is ticking, right? I mean, there's only so much longer that Manny can actually fight. The other thing is the other things surrounding. I mean, there's a lot of rumors. Is Manny's tax situation really taken care of? Is he going to fight in the United States? Is he going to fight overseas? Is he still working with PBC? Is he not working with PBC? There have been so many rumors swirling around. Did he sign with Paradigm Sports? And is that going to open the door for him fighting a Conor McGregor? Like, all these answers that we're still waiting for regarding Manny are just kind of going to extend. So I know that doesn't really play into the inactivity, or does it hurt him or not, but I just think that at this point, Manny has one, maybe two fights left in him, and that's that.
Now let's switch it up a little bit, Peter. We got to go. This is between rounds, and remember, if you are watching, if you're not watching this on YouTube, make sure you go to our YouTube channel and to subscribe. And don't forget to hit the like button, as well as to click that notifications bell, so that you'll be able to see when videos are uploaded. And
on the flip side, if you are watching on our YouTube channel, go download the Fight TV app, because there's so much more content you can grab over there as well.
Absolutely, 100%. We are powered by Fight TV. I got to say this, and this is, like I said, it's somewhat... I can't think about Manny Pacquiao, and this is probably a strange memory, but I can't think about Manny Pacquiao without thinking about the Fight Night video games. Fight Night Champion, Fight Night Round 3, Fight Night Round 4. I just did a video with my son playing Fight Night Round 3. It was it's weird. I don't know if this makes me Father of the Year or the worst Father of the Year. It's like the first video game I ever really sat down with him and let him play. So he'd be like 5 years old, just pounding away on the controller, not even really knowing what he's doing, but he's playing.
He turned out okay. He turned out
he was like the only 6-year-old in the world who knew who Marvin Hagler was. So it was interesting, right? But I say this to say, we are now at 9 years since the last boxing video game was released. 9 years. And if you compare that to the fact that the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL, most every other sport has an annual representation. Perhaps a more close, relative to this is the UFC. The UFC is on an 18 to 24 month cycle, but it's still a regular release. And I have been pounding this drum.
I know you have been.
Yeah, I've been covering combat sports for over 10 years. Been covering sports video games for just as long. And I've been pounding this drum, and I'm not alone, right? I did an interview with Trailblazer superstar Damian Lillard. He talked about it. He went on Twitter talking about it. I don't know. I want to ask you, because I know from my standpoint, I feel like it's inevitable, even though this 9-year gap is still kind of blowing my mind. What do you think? And I know you're not a gamer, but I know you're into the business.
Right.
What do you think would have to happen for somebody to sign off? And I'll have some input on from someone who knows the gaming industry, but I gotta, this is just between rounds. We'll only be here for a second, but I really want to know.
So first and foremost, the turnover in boxing with regard to champions is at such a greater rate that it's hard to really keep the relevancy. What I mean by that is a championship could turn over the course of a year 2 or 3 times, depending on who the champions are and the challengers. And we have 4 sanctioning bodies. I think the previous games included more iconic, historically iconic fighters. And so what you had, generational fighters that were fighting against each other. And now, you go and you do the development of the game. By the time you develop the game to the release date, some of the people could just be one and done, one-hit wonders, ancient news. A lot of things could take place. I think what would have to happen is there would have to be this generational scenario where you would have to cover a span of X amount of years and take the people that really kind of had a successful long-term reign. And that's where I think the relevance would be, because you understand what I'm saying? You got the 16 weight classes with 4 belts. You got 60, you have.
But here's the thing. And I hear what you're saying. And I'm not saying that there's no validity to it.
Right.
But I think that's the problem.
Brian, let me ask you this. Hold on. Okay, let's just do this. Let's just pick 4 weight classes.
Who are your head? Let me stop you there, because I think we're going down the wrong street. And I think this is what you're saying right now is the reason we don't have one. And I think because
am I the bad guy?
No, it's not that. What it is the people who are making the decisions are not gamers.
Okay, but hold on.
And so
hold on.
that this
Brian,
sort of thing matters.
I get it, but here's the thing. So then I didn't get to make my whole point. So, but you're talking about, a basketball, football, like a Madden or NBA 2K. And before you cut me off, so we're dealing with actual players, right? I know that you can build your own players in some of these other games. So what I was going to say to you is that the game, in order for it to be successful, would 100% have to be where you create your own characters. And if you create those characters, maybe we could sprinkle in some historically legendary fighters across generations and figure out a way or how to include them, but it wouldn't really be necessary, because then what could happen is you could actually build, online gaming superstars based on those characters. Does that make sense? Based on those users?
Absolutely. That's certainly a part of what the success model will have to be, because most believe, and there's documented proof of this. One of the things that kind of hurt the Fight Night series was that they felt that they needed Floyd, and Floyd wanted part ownership of the brand, and just really kind of wild, crazy demands is what he wanted to be a part of the game. He was once asked on a where he was taking questions from a fan, and they asked him, "Why aren't you in Fight Night?" And he said, "Because EA doesn't want to pay anybody." But in talking to people from Electronic Arts, I've actually been told that without specific details, there were some exorbitant requests made from certain fighters who didn't want, who were really driving a hard bargain about their inclusion in the game. But see, my whole point, and you talked about that a little bit, is that is kind of not exactly the point. Now, true enough, there are going to be people who are going to be drawn to a boxing video game because it has Canelo, because it has Anthony Joshua, because it has Floyd, maybe because it has these people. But there is a large group who will not care as much, because, first of all, you mentioned being able to create yourself. Well, also, if you give gamers the right tool, they will create Floyd themselves.
Right.
They will create
We just
Manny
saw that.
themselves.
You sent me a Kobe Bryant
Right.
scenario that was fantastic.
It
Actually,
just
better than the game itself.
and it's funny that you say that because I'll show you now. I mean, so this is
There it is.
this was done by an
What do you
amazing
have that
model.
sitting ready to go at all times?
All the time,
So
all
random.
the time, all the time. This is something that was made by a modder named ITZ. And so he made an image of unfortunately, the last image of the way we, saw Kobe Bryant before his untimely death. This is made by a modder. This is not made by 2K. This is not made by EA. Another image. This is younger Kobe. And so the one on the left is the one that 2K has in their game currently.
Right.
The one on the right is one that was made by a modder named Shuajota, aka
So much better.
Adrian Kaneda. So this is what you have, the talent you have at home. And here's the thing: most laymen are going to see that. Yeah, well, honestly, there is one.
Sign him up. Let's get going.
There's one modder who I did work with who did ultimately end up getting hired by 2K. So this is you don't essentially the gaming developer, all they really need to do is make the gameplay itself tight, where it's addictive and there's a competitive edge to it. And then you need to create a creation tool that you can give to your gamers and say, make what you want.
And if that were to be the case, then what I would say is you would basically have the opportunity to build a fighter from the ground up. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe the one thing we could do to add something that is historical, that kind of creates like an anchor, is maybe we have some historically successful trainers. So then maybe depending on the trainer that the fighter works with and the training regimen, that would all have to go into the success of the fighter.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of it. All of those things from a career building standpoint. The esports scene is very important for this concept. You have to have a competitive gaming community around this, because that's the thing that will take it from the hardcore fans to a much larger subgroup within gaming, and a much bigger and a more booming industry, which is a part of that whole gaming subgroup. Is now you have esports, and now you have people who are good at fighting games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, who are now playing this game because hopefully the fighting mechanic is still solid, and some of the same skills that are required to be good at Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat are the ones that would be required for this. So now you have their attention, and you also get that exposure, and it breaks you out into a whole nother demographic. So I could go on about this forever.
I know you can.
But this is a big time thing for me, and this was between the rounds. We got to get to round two.
So Brian, one thing I wanted to actually touch on, because I saw something on Twitter today, which I found interesting, and it was actually pretty cool. And I saw Floyd Mayweather Jr. teaching his son how to box. And it was great because the way that he was actually teaching his son, was from a very technical standpoint. The way that you really, when you're learning how to box, from a fundamental standpoint, how you would go about it. And it just looked good for many reasons. I mean, obviously, it's always good to see a father and son doing something together, no matter who they are. Just, watching that. Also watching Floyd as a teacher. And one of the things that it kind of made me wonder, and part of this was with the passing of his uncle, longtime trainer, former world champion, Roger, the original Black Mamba Mayweather, right? I wonder, is Floyd's career officially over, right? We'd seen him training, we'd seen him hinting about something big in 2020. Is it possible that maybe Floyd could be a great trainer? But is Floyd official? I know he said he's retired. I've been one to echo those remarks to people that say he's coming back. I'm like, he's not fighting again. But with everything that's going on right now, and Father Time, right? Only person that's undefeated. Is Floyd officially done?
I feel like there's a lot going on right now with Floyd, just on so many levels. And this is not, and it's weird because Floyd is very much a control freak. I think everybody kind of knows that. Floyd likes to be in your consciousness, and Floyd likes to be the topic of discussion, but he likes to do that under his own terms. And right now, the things that are happening in his life are not on his own terms. And I think that may have something to do with why you're hearing him talk less right now than you normally would, especially for the amount of press that he's occupying right now. So I totally think that what's happening right now with the pandemic, with his uncle, drastically, decreases the chances that he'll ever fight again. I always thought that was kind of shaky anyway, just like you. But this brings a level of realness to it. So just for people who, and I'm not trying to create a path to sympathy for Floyd. He's a difficult guy to do that for sometimes, right? Or all the time. But just to put into perspective, this has been a crazy year for Floyd Mayweather. It's been a crazy year for most everybody. But there's certain people, if you really take a look back, you're like, whoa, you've had an eventful year, good or bad, right? So Floyd lost his uncle, who everybody knows. He makes no bones about how close they were. You can tell what that is. So it's almost difficult to quantify what that loss is meaning or has meant to him in a very just totally strange, odd, don't even know how to touch it, how to approach it kind of a way. The mother of his children, Josie Harris, has passed away. And I believe this was maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Roger passed. He seemed to be emotionally impacted by it, but you hesitate to talk about how that works because she is the person who he accused him of the domestic violence, of the battering that ended up with him doing time. And then now recently, in the last 4 days, his daughter is trending all over social media she got arrested 3 days ago, I believe it was now, for stabbing the female acquaintance or female companion of rapper NBA Youngboy, who she has been dating. She's been torn apart on social media for sticking by this young man, despite his promiscuity and all sorts of things that are going on. She went to jail. The girl was pregnant that she stabbed, and she was in critical condition a day or two after the stabbing. And so she gets out of jail, she gets bonded out. NBA Youngboy does a video. He goes live on a video and he's got her there. It's a profane, just ridiculous rant. And in the rant, he refers to Floyd as her BA, and I'm censoring myself, bitch ass dad, while she's sitting there. And she's there, and if you look at her, and I'm gonna tap into some other expertise that I've acquired in my life, having worked with troubled youth. The look in her face is just a totally glazed, just disconnected from reality look. Now, everybody knows that Floyd is no angel, and I totally believe in the concept of reap what you sow and that sort of thing. But I also am a human being, and I think about other human beings, even when they've been dastardly. And I just look at Floyd and I'm like, as a human being, as a nephew, as a father, I'll say tough, but I know some people won't be comfortable with that because we're talking about Floyd, somebody who's very tough to feel sympathetic for some people. But man, this is a heck of a 2 to 3 week period right now to have to be going through. And like I said, Floyd likes to be the spotlight. He likes to be on your mind, but not like this, I'm sure. And it's nasty, man. So all of this stuff that's going on, and then we're talking about, is he going to possibly come back and fight? Yeah, to me, see, all of the games and stuff that Floyd plays, foot in, 1 foot out, that's all on his terms. He gets to dictate that. He gets to play with your mind. He gets to dictate the headlines. But he doesn't like it when he's in these headlines and he doesn't have any control. And that's what these situations represent. And I'm sorry, I mean, you got to eat your good with your bad. But I mean, I am, as a human being, I kind of feel like just makes you go, ooh, you know, I don't know. Maybe some people would have a hard time relating to that because they say, well, hey, you know, he made his bed. He's got to lay in it. As many of the bad things or whatever things that he's done, da, 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 da. Man, it's tough. It's a tough pill. It's a tough group of pills to swallow, in my opinion. So,
well, it kind of reminds me of a story that Todd DeBuff, the president of Top Rank, told me when just over a year ago I brought Xander Zayas in to sign his contract. Mm-hmm. And he was talking to Xander, and he was recalling the story about how young Floyd Mayweather, early in his career, just wanted to fight all the time. You know, he just was very disciplined, very serious about his craft, and he wanted to stay active and he wanted to fight. And he said to Todd one day, who relayed this message to us in his office, he said that Floyd just is a different person when he's in between those ropes. Mm-hmm. It's his home. It's his comfort. It's where he feels safe. It's where he feels good, where he feels happy. And so maybe that video on Twitter of him training his son and being where he loves to be was a bit of escape from a lot of tragedy that's been happening to him lately.
And the other thing is, you don't know when that video was shot, because Floyd has been notorious for posting video at different times, giving you.
But maybe it's not that purpose. Yeah. You know what I mean? The meaning. Yeah. Maybe it's the meaning behind it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not one to kick someone when they're down. Yeah. I like to talk about what goes on in between the ropes. Mm-hmm. I have sympathy for people that lose people. I have sympathy and empathy, as I know you're a very spiritual person. And I know you can understand that as well. So, you know, challenging, tough, regardless of what you think of someone's persona in their professional life. And even, you know, what's reported doesn't necessarily mean what's true. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I've seen that because I've met plenty of people in this game for so long that what you see on the outside is not really what you see on the inside. It's right. Somewhat of that public act, and it plays into a lot of things. And so, you know, now's not the time to judge, in my opinion, because obviously, you know, people go through stuff. We're having a tough time as a world right now, but, you know.
Yeah, and that's so crazy. Everything I laid out.
Yeah. And
in a pandemic.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you know, the pandemic is tough for everybody, but imagine going through a tough time that would have been tough in any era or any time period, but also you got a shelter in place. It's kind of tough. So it is what it is. But I am, you know, praying for Floyd and his family and hoping that things work out as best as possible for him. So, you know, it's like I said, it's a couple tough pills to swallow.
So with the Anthony Joshua fight in June officially being canceled by Matchroom, and no other fights on tap right now by any of the other promoters, and understanding that even if this stay at home by the first week of May, that in most cases it's going to take fighters a good 6 to 8 weeks to be back in fighting shape. We're looking at July the earliest. I'm hearing now possibly September the earliest, where we're going to see, you know, some of these fights taking place in general. I wonder, you know, what happens? How do things shake out? What fights begin to get made? Are promoters going to start to try to make up for lost time by making some of these mega fights, because they're basically losing an entire quarter of the year to this pandemic that's really crippled? And so I'm just sitting back here thinking, you know, what are we going to be looking at come the fall? You know, we hear about these fights like Canelo Triple G? Is it time that that Terence Crawford is going to get to fight Errol Spence or Sean Porter? Are we going to see a lot of these fights that haven't been able to be made before really kind of fast track themselves, because these promoters need to try to make up for some lost ground? And how does this play out for the Fury Wilder 3 fight? Is the interest still there? Does this help Wilder? Does it hurt? Especially being in the business with all my fighters on hold. And so, that's what I got right there.
All right, here we are in round 3. We've had a good fight so far. Trading blows, almost like Hearns versus Hagler. We've had a good fight. So we got to go to our community here. And this question or comment comes from a boxing hacker, and he commented this on an interview that we recently posted with Gervonta Davis. You should go ahead for sure. Go to our YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, make sure you also go to Fight TV and subscribe there for combat sports content. But on our YouTube channel, we Davis talking Leo Santa Cruz and Ryan Garcia. He basically said he had 2 pay-per-view fights set up for this year. We're knowing right now with the pandemic situation that might not even be possible, but at the time he thought that that's what was the case. But Boxing Hacker says took a fight with whack Leo Santa Cruz. So he's talking about Gervonta. He says, I would have rather seen the Lomachenko fight, but the Ryan Garcia fight will be good. What is your take on that? I love comments from fans because they get to pull absolutely no punches. They get to say whatever. And, so we tend to wrap our comments in a certain way. Bam, here it is.
Look, what do you want to tell you? I mean, he just said whack Leo Santa Cruz.
Whack Leo Santa Cruz.
I mean, that in itself is ridiculous.
That in itself is pretty whack.
It's pretty whack. I mean, I don't even know how he would have liked to have seen him fight Lomachenko. First of all, he's fighting Santa Cruz at 130. Lomachenko is still fighting at 35, and he's fighting Teofimo Lopez for now. Okay. But why would anyone think that Leo Santa Cruz would be in the whack category? I mean, the guy's an excellent fighter, world champion. I mean, I don't even, listen, I don't know why anyone wouldn't even think that he doesn't have the ability to and his power to beat Gervonta Davis. Like, why would this be considered a whack fight when I think that from an odds-on perspective, you're going to see, when BetOnline does put these up, you're going to see a close fight here. And I really do think that going with Gervonta's attitude of wanting to beat the best and being his first pay-per-view, he had to have a very credible, difficult opponent. And I think Leo Santa Cruz is perfect.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. First of all, I agree that Boxing Hacker is insane. Calling Leo Santa Cruz whack. That's whack. That's ridiculous. It sounds like somebody who hasn't really been paying attention to the fight game. Leo Santa Cruz has 1 loss on the career, I believe, and that was a controversial, close loss to Carl Frampton, which he avenged in the fight after that. Leo Santa Cruz has fought good fighters, even though you can't take a shot at him a little bit because the fight with him and Gary Russell should have taken place at some point. But Gary Russell fights like every leap year, so I can't necessarily put anything on anybody who is supposed to fight Gary Russell because he doesn't fight regularly. So that is what it is. I disagree with you, though, Peter, when you talk about it's going to be a good fight. Now, it's a smart fight. It makes sense. And when I say smart, I don't mean he's taking a soft touch. I mean, it's required for Gervonta to fight somebody like Leo Santa Cruz. Leo Santa Cruz has a good name. He has an outstanding record. He's a world champion in multiple weight classes. This is not a bad fight on paper. Like you say, oh, Gervonta fights Leo Santa Cruz. It makes sense. But stylistically, Gervonta is going to smash Leo Santa Cruz if he is in shape, motivated, and there. Stylistically, it's a horrible fight for Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz throws a ton of punches. He's always there to be hit, but he hasn't displayed enough real power at 126, let alone to move up to 130. I think Gervonta has the speed advantage. He has the overall athletic advantage. And I think he has the power advantage. I think he beats Leo Santa Cruz up in a fight that probably ends up being at the top of his highlight reel moving forward when he goes on to fight other people. The only contingency there I see is Gervonta has to be in shape physically and mentally. If he comes in prepared and doesn't have to race to the scale to make weight like he's done for some of these other fights, he beats Leo Santa Cruz like he stole something.
Well, look, I'm going to disagree, obviously. I think that the Gamboa fight, an injured Gamboa laid a kind of blueprint as to how to make things difficult for Davis. Even Gervonta said himself that it wasn't his best performance. He felt that Gamboa
level of competition is what he said.
Well, he felt Gamboa didn't come to fight. Therefore, he felt he had to make the fight, which is what he told us, which when you have to force the action, it makes it difficult. But let's also take into account when you tear your Achilles tendon in the second round. I mean, it could change the way you fight the rest of the fight. So we got to give credit to Gamboa on that. Davis didn't look his best. He's had problems making weight. I do think he's one of the most gifted fighters in the world. I do think that he is, capable, has the potential. I think he's still potential unrealized. Yeah, he is 25 years old. He is already a world champion. I think that there's something to be said about experience. There's something to be said about boxing IQ. And I do think that what Davis said is he feels that this fight, if you remember, was going to be like the Pedraza fight. That's what he predicted. Yeah. And I think that Leo Santa Cruz and his team are smart enough to know that that's how Davis is going to approach it, that he's going to come in, look at the pressure, and blow him out. And if Santa Cruz can use his physical attributes and reach and use his boxing IQ and be smart, then I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think, including you.
Yeah, well, you said something about not bringing the fight and how that's an issue for Gervonta. I just don't think that Leo Santa Cruz knows how to fight any other way. I don't think that he has the physical tools to fight any other way. He doesn't have great feet. He does have reach. He does have length. But he doesn't have great feet. I don't see. He's nowhere near the athlete Gamboa is, even at Gamboa's age. And so it's not going to be the same. And the other contingency, which I think is the biggest one, is Gervonta mentally plugged in? Because that's what I said. If Gervonta is plugged in and he's in shape, he blows him out. Now, if I agree with you, he was not in the right, I don't think, mental or physical shape fighting Gamboa. He fought Gamboa, to me, like it was somebody that he considered was way past their prime, older, and whatever, which is why he barely makes weight and blah, 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 blah. I'm concerned about Gervonta really taking the fight game serious during a time period of preparation. I believe he takes it serious when he steps in the ropes, but sometimes that's too late. So if something trips him up against Santa Cruz, I think that's what it is. But Gervonta functioning at his top level and Leo Santa Cruz functioning at his top level, which I have no reason to believe he'll be at anything less, Gervonta knocks him out.
Well, the point I'm making
batters him late.
Look, the point I'm making is that it's going to be a better fight than people think. I mean, that's really, I just said it was going to be closer than people think. And,
I think it's going to be one-sided. If those things are in place, I think it's going to be really one-sided. I just style it, and I really don't even mean that as a shot at Leo Santa Cruz. I feel like Leo Santa Cruz is a very good fighter. I just think stylistically, and for him to be coming up in weight to fight that fight, if they were both fighting at 126 and all the time, and this is just where Gervonta was and different sort of thing, it would be different. But for Leo Santa Cruz to not have demonstrated KO power, devastating KO power at 126, to now be going up to 130 to fight a superior athlete, I don't like it for him.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see
if that fight still happens.
If it still happens,
because here's the thing:
but
listen. Right now, the best fighting that's taking place is on Twitter with Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis. So
Ryan Garcia is the undisputed champion of Twitter scrap.
Lomachenko said that Davis was the undisputed champion. We're the best, whatever, champion on Twitter. I'm probably just misquoting him now, but it was something to that effect. Yes. But the point is that this is what I was getting at earlier when I said, do some of these fights fall out, and do we just go to some of these bigger fights because of promoters trying to make up for lost time?
We'll see. All right, we have made it to the championship rounds, and I gotta take this time to respond to what you said between rounds 2 and 3, Peter. You were asking the question about, because of the pandemic, because of schedules being pushed back, does it bring about a stronger sense of urgency for promoters and networks to make bigger fights? And I 100% think it does. Whether or not you'll still see people be greedy and try to bide their time and that sort of thing remains to be seen. But the way I see it is, it's almost like a strike, right? It's not as bad as that, because obviously fans are not blaming the fight game necessarily for this absence. But fans are going to want to see action when it comes back. And because we're already talking about a sport that's in a position where fans are kind of like, you don't give us good fights, it's so much politics involved. It seems to me that at least for a 8 to 12 month time period, there would need to be some show of solidarity amongst promoters for what's good for the overall business moving forward. And obviously, you'll be able to speak to that portion of what I just said much better than I can, having dealt with so many promoters, closely over the years. But it just makes sense to me that the Bob Arums, the De La Hoyas, the Al Haymans, and I know he's technically not a promoter, but we know he functions as that. All of those people, the Eddie Hearns, would all say, you know what? We can't play around for this little time period. First of all, even more so than some sort of utopian, obligation to the fans, even more than that, we've lost some money this year. How can we make this back as quickly as possible? And to me, the answer is in giving some fights to people that maybe they thought what they may not see. So like you said, the Errol Spence to Terence Crawford fights, the Joshua Wilder fight, if that materializes at some point. I mean, unless Tyson Fury falls off the wagon completely from a conditioning standpoint, I expect him to do the same thing to Deontay Wilder in the third fight. So who knows how that works. But conceptually, giving some of these fights that have been mere fantasy concepts seems to me to be the quickest way to recoup as much money as that you've lost as possible. There's no way to say for sure how you'll get that back. But beyond that, it also seems to be the best way to kind of reward fans for waiting and coming back to the sport after a shutdown. So, I don't know.
Listen, I mean, you made a lot of good points, and that's what, part of what I was saying was it's more so about the money.
Yeah.
Yes, it's about giving the fans what they want, but this wasn't something that was this wasn't the plan, right? This is just the circumstance. But I think that, everyone's going to have to come together and figure out how to make up for lost time, make up for lost revenue, also give the fans what they want, keep everybody happy. There was a lot of momentum coming into 2020. 2020 started off with a bang. We had some great fights on the horizon. Fights were being announced every week all around the world.
Yeah.
And came to a screeching halt. So you made a lot of good points, and I think all of them are accurate. And I think that it's time that when this does pass, we look at the landscape of what is. And I think that, jump into some of these mega fights is just going to benefit everybody right from the get-go. And I think it's going to kind of, refuel and kickstart the sport and have us back on track.
I would agree. So hopefully soon we'll be talking about actual fight news and not as much speculation. Right. And hopefully we can see these some encouraging numbers from the battle against COVID-19, the coronavirus, And first and foremost, humanity can start to recover, and then sports can kind of, follow suit, or maybe vice versa. Maybe sports will kind of lead the way into a healthier space. So that's all we got for you today. This has been The Fight, guys. As I said, make sure, if you have not subscribed to us on YouTube and you enjoy this content and want to continue to see more, head over to YouTube if you're not already there. Subscribe to The Fight, guys. Like this video, share it. And also make sure you know that we can be seen on Fight TV as well. Subscribe to Fight TV. It's not just boxing. It's not just The Fight, guys. It's MMA. It's professional wrestling. Several different promotions across the board. Bare knuckle boxing. It is Fight TV for a reason. That's all we got for you today. For my man, Peter Kahn, God bless and peace.